Assalamualaikum, Mustafa Sab, how are you?
Walaikum salam. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah for coming on to our show. So, Mustafa Sab, just give us a bit of an insight into, who you are and what you want to do.
I am a sixth year Jamia student, so it was 6 years ago now, almost, that I joined Jamia.
Okay.
I wanted to become a lawyer for quite a while, to do something like human rights to help people, but then I realized that the best way I could, the best thing I could do to help people was to join Jamia, and to help people, or to play the smallest part in this community, which is inshallah going to change the world. And so I thought that way I could help the world more than being a lawyer. So then I joined Jamia, and it's not easy, but it's definitely the best decision I made in my life. So it's just Allah's blessings that I'm here.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So Mustafa Sab, I've heard that you've got a keen interest in Arabic. So, kind of take us along a journey. How did that interest start, and where did it take you?
Well, Arabic is, well, the language of the Quran. It's not that accessible to people here. So again, I can only count the blessings of God, and I'll be eternally grateful, or for a million other things, but for this as well, to my mom, God bless her, for finding a place where I could learn Arabic. I started when I was 11 years old, and she took me every week, twice a week for 5 years. When I was 16, I went to visit I stayed for 2.5 months and visited a Jamaat in the Middle East. They looked after me, and I learned to speak there. After joining Jamia, I spent another month in the summer holidays after the first year there. And then again, I returned um, because in the summer of last year. If the Arabs were known for their hospitality before the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the age of ignorance, that only increased with the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then it was only renewed with the arrival of the Promised Messiah. So Arab Ahmadis are the pinnacle of hospitality.
Yeah.
So I was really looked after, as well as the opportunity of learning to speak the Arabic language. And at the beginning, when my mum took me, I didn't really know what it was or didn't appreciate its value. But it's been like 13 years now, and every single day I learn something new about it, or I find something more about it. And you really appreciate the depth and the science and the logic and the beauty that Arabic has, in a way that no other language does.
Yeah, no. So, whilst learning Arabic, I think many people have the passion for it. Many people want to learn Arabic, but there are lots of difficulties that get in the way. So, what difficulties did you encounter when you were learning Arabic, and how did you overcome them?
I suppose, well, I was blessed firstly, having two very, very good teachers. First was my teacher, God bless her, who taught me for years before Jamia, and the second teacher was Jamia itself. So I've been lucky to enjoy really good teaching. It also depends on what we mean by Arabic, because speaking Arabic I enjoy languages anyway, so that's kind of something else that interests me. But bringing Arabic back to what's important, and the reason why it's important is, of course, being the language of the Holy Quran, and also the language of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his ahadith, his sayings. So I think speaking Arabic is a secondary thing, and the first thing I think that we need more focus on is understanding Quranic Arabic. And so that's something that I've wished more people can have access to, because I think by default as a Muslim, you can't but love, as you mentioned, you can't but love Arabic, you can't
Yeah.
but have a passion for the language of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So,
And so therefore I would say that learning Quranic Arabic is our main priority, and speaking Arabic can come afterwards, because if it wasn't for the Quran, Arabic would just be another language.
yeah. So how do you think what you have learned from your journey on learning Arabic can help us as students? How can we integrate that into our lives, and how can we practically learn Arabic?
That's a very, very good question. That's kind of the key, isn't it? So
Yeah.
focusing on the Quran as starting point. God says in the Holy Quran that وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرَ اللَّهُ الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ, that indeed we have made the Quran easy to understand, but not just understand, also to remember. So is there anyone who will pay attention to it? And also God says, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ, that indeed we have revealed this reminder, And indeed, we are the ones who will protect it, as in save it from abrogation, as in physical protection, as in from people changing it or from getting lost. But also, we will protect it in that we will look how spiritually protect it, as in make sure there's always a group of people who understand its true meaning and represent what it is and act according to it and show its true practical example to the world. Both the physical and spiritual protection. As part of that, it's important for Ahmadis and Muslims in general and everybody to learn the Holy Quran. And what Allah Ta'ala, especially with the verse mentioned about God making it easy to understand and remember, is the Quran is actually the same, it covers the same kind of concepts in general, as in life and death, belief and disbelief, the meaning of our lives, the reason for the creation of the universe. And it kind of approaches these main topics, as well as others, from a variety of angles and in a variety of different ways. What that means is that people, I suppose, don't appreciate the fact that if you look at, for example, the lemmas, as in the non-verbal particles of the Quran, the first 8, I think, are mentioned more. Each of them are mentioned more than 1,000 times. So you have like the name Allah, of course, from, in, indeed, on, those, no, things like that. And for verbs, I think the most common 2 verbs, as in to say and to be, come up more than 1,000 times each. And the Ahmadi Muslim Students Association, so a collection of bright, well-educated individuals. So for us, but for everybody, like learning 20, 30, 40 words is not difficult. But those are the same words. Those are the essence of the Holy Quran, and the main words that formulate its text. So if we can learn those words, we can go a long way. There are rules of application and rules of grammar. Because I grew up and seeing so few people blessed with the opportunity that I had in terms of learning Arabic, and I don't even consider myself worthy of it. And I know so many students who are way more, who apply themselves much better and are much more dedicated to their studies. And I'm sure that if they were in my place, they would have learned so much more. And so that always meant I wished more people had the same opportunity. So what I've started a couple of weeks ago is writing a document, which might become a book one day, inshallah, God knows, which is approaching the translation of the Holy Quran. But rather than having like the standard approach, which is to start from the first verse of the first chapter on the first page, and that way go through the Quran, which is starting the beginning of the Quran, as in the first chapter, Surah Al-Fatiha, with the most meanings and the most vast content, starting that with no knowledge of Arabic, which I don't think is the correct approach. So my opinion, which is untried and unverified, is to go for a frequency-based approach, which is to learn these most common verbs first, right, and then slowly introduce kind of rules of grammar and rules of application. So I really ask for everyone's prayers, because it's not been done before, but I really want to get this out there. And so inshallah, it won't be too long before hopefully we can see something. I just want everyone to pray that it works out, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. Sounds great. Hopefully we can look forward to seeing that on our bookshelf soon as well, to help us. So you kind of touched upon the fact that we should take baby steps first, and then rather than jumping into the kind of deep end with Surah Al-Fatiha first, we should kind of take baby steps, learn the key words, and that way we can understand more of the Quran gradually. So what are your tips on how we can do that in our lives? So, during quarantine especially, we have a lot of free time available. So how can we apply that into our daily schedule, our daily routine?
Well, that's a good question. Hazur, our Caliph, the promised Messiah, the previous Khulafa, everyone should, reading the Quran is important anyway. And Hazur was particularly mentioned, especially in a couple of years ago, I remember several times, in fact, in his speech here at the annual Jamia graduation ceremony and Friday sermons as well, how we should take time every day to reflect upon the Holy Quran with the translation. As in, not just the Arabic text, but trying to understand what the meaning is. And I'm sure when Hazur says, reflect on the translation, obviously we don't have any translation-only Qurans. We always have the Arabic text with the translation, because we don't want to do what's happened with the Bible in a lot of cases, which is that when you only have the translation, you lose fidelity to the original text. And that's how the chain of abrogation and losing the spirit of the text starts. So I think what we should do in that time we spend reflecting on the translation is compare the translation. For example, just off the word in Arabic to write, which is there's no, it's to write, but it actually means he write. Off the word he write or he wrote, sorry. Off the word he wrote in Arabic, you get the word book, letter, desk or office, library, booklet, writing, and writer.
Right. Okay.
Because Arabic has a scientific base in that every single word essentially almost is formed off a root. And so if we learn a couple of these words, or like 20, 30 of these words, when we're reading the translation, we'll see that same word there. Like belief, believer, to believe, they believed, and all of these things to do with belief, for example, that are regularly mentioned in the Quran. When we read the translation, we'll see those words in the Arabic.
Yeah.
So what I would say is whenever we have that time we spend every day, however much time we can spend reading the Quran with translation, is to start to learn these words. If you search, if you Google Quranic nouns and Quranic verbs by frequency, there's a lot of resources out there where you can start to see these words. And then you can, when you're next reading the Quran, see if you can spot those letters. Because the thing is, most of us already grew up, thanks to our teachers and our mothers, knowing how to read the Arabic of the Quran.
Yeah.
And so I remember reading somewhere, research that for an English speaker, the two most difficult languages to learn are Arabic and Chinese. And just looking at them, I'm guessing at least half of that is based on the script and how different it is to Arabic, to English, sorry. And if we know how to read Arabic, we're already halfway there. So we can, when we're reading the English, we don't have to ignore the Arabic like it's just something, like it's like Latin prayers in the church maybe, which is just a formality, something you hear in a foreign language, a liturgical formality. We can read the Arabic, and then we can actually look out for those words that we've learned based on those words of high frequency.
Okay. Yeah.
And then maybe one day, I really, really hope this works, but I don't know, that I can write something to help people. That might be there too, but don't count on it.
No, I'm sure. Anything in the pipelines will be good, inshallah. I think it's quite pertinent also that the fact that the Promised Messiah alayhi salam also called Arabic the mother of all languages. You know, so giving the importance to Arabic and showing us all that, you know, how important it is for us to learn it and how it will impact our daily lives. You know, even by making the recitation of the Quran easier for us because we know the meanings. And learning the Quran will also be easier for us when you learn the meanings as well. So how different do you think it is, the Quran, the dialect of the Quran? How different do you think that is to modern day Arabic? And do you think it's worth learning modern day Arabic first or afterwards, or what do you think?
That's a great question. Very, very good question. Very, very briefly, Arabic nowadays is split into two languages, which is modern standard Arabic and then colloquial Arabic.
Right.
Because the Arab world is split all the way from Western Africa to the east of the Middle East. Those dialects vary between country. I suppose in other countries as well, like Pakistan, for example, the languages within Pakistan, like Punjabi and Sindhi and Urdu, vary so much that from town to town, sometimes you can't even understand, let alone city to city. It's the same thing on a larger scale with the geographical extent of the Arab world. So those colloquial languages aren't very important unless you're planning to live there. What we have other than that is modern standard Arabic, which is the formal language of the Arabic world, which is written in books, which is spoken on the news, which is heard on TV, which is their writing and reading language, essentially. What is so amazing about Arabic is if you look at like Latin now, it doesn't exist anymore, even though that's the language upon which half of the languages of Europe are built.
Yeah.
What you have with Arabic is modern standard Arabic is so close to the language of the Quran. As in, if you go to like 848 something, I don't know what the Sky channel is, Sky News Arabiya, the Arabic version of Sky News, the language spoken there is almost identical to the language of the Holy Quran. That in itself is a miracle. Like if you look at like Greek and Latin of the Bible, as in Greek is like in Greece and Latin is absolutely nowhere apart from the dusty books of university. No offense to anyone studying Latin. I think it doesn't have relevance as a modern language anymore because it's a dead language now. It has only academic. to people involved in academia and stuff. But now, Islam is the only religion whose holy book is completely unchanged. Not a single letter or word is out of place. And that same language is spoken every single day, 24 hours on TV, written every day in books that are published all over the Arab world. So that language of the Holy Quran not only means you can understand the Holy Quran, understand the language of Hadith, inshallah, be able to, when you're reading tilawat in the Quran and praying in Arabic with the prayers of the prayer, feel like you're actually speaking because you understand the language you're saying, and it means you can be understood in 23, I think, Arab countries and learn one of the official languages of the United Nations. So from a number of perspectives, I think it's a blessing to learn Arabic, and I'd encourage everyone to do everything they can to learn it.
Okay.
And specifically about how to learn it, I think you could 2 words a day.
Yeah.
If we're talking about 40, 50 words, giving you 30, 40%, I estimate, of the Holy Quran, those 50 words are definitely worth your time. So 2 words a day, we're talking a matter of weeks, really.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. Jazakallah for all your tips and all the knowledge that you've given us today. Hopefully, inshallah, we'll see your book coming out as well soon.
Please pray.
Yeah, inshallah. Jazakallah Mustafa Sab. Hope everything goes well. Please stay safe. And Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks for having me.
No worries.
Jazakallah.